There was a time when hearing the name John D. Rockefeller made grown men tremble. He wasn't just rich, he became the world's first billionaire, a man whose empire didn't simply control an industry, it swallowed it whole. Competitors were crushed, politicians challenged, and presidents confronted. But the most shocking part is this: the man who built one of the greatest empires in history started life in absolute poverty. To understand his climb to the top, we go back to 1839, to a boy born with nothing, who became everything. John Davison Rockefeller entered the world in a small village in upstate New York. His family was so poor they barely survived the winters. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, was known to everyone as Devil Bill, and for good reason. Devil Bill wasn't a farmer. He was a wandering salesman, a peddler of fake miracle cures, a hypnotist, a trickster, and a man who once won a live bear in a contest and kept it as a pet. He would disappear for weeks, even months, then return with a fancy carriage, expensive clothes, and toys for the children. But when he was gone, the family lived in hunger and cold. What John didn't know was that Devil Bill was living a double life. Under a fake name, Dr. William Livingston, he traveled the country selling worthless medicines, and he secretly married a second wife in another state. 2 families, neither wife knew about the other. With a father who was never home, young John and his mother Eliza were left to survive alone. She taught him 2 things: discipline and faith. And John learned business on his own. As a child, he raised turkeys from stolen wild eggs and sold them. By the age of 12, he was lending money to neighbors with interest, carefully recording every transaction in a little notebook he called Ledger A. He kept that notebook for the rest of his life. At age 10, the family fled town after Devil Bill was accused of rape. Nothing was proven, but the scandal forced them to run. By the time they resettled in Cleveland, John knew college was impossible. With 5 siblings and no real father, he quit school 2 months before graduation and knocked on every door in the city looking for work. Railroads, banks, merchants, every single one rejected him. After 6 long weeks, one small firm hired him because of his perfect handwriting. John was so grateful that he celebrated the day he got that job, September 26th, every year of his life. He called it Job Day, and he considered it more important than his own birthday. At 18, he formed a partnership with Maurice Clark. During the Civil War, they made a fortune selling produce. By age 23, Rockefeller earned the equivalent of $500,000 in a single year. Then, a chemist named Samuel Andrews presented a new discovery, a way to refine crude oil into clean-burning kerosene. Oil had just been discovered in Pennsylvania, and people were calling it black gold. Rockefeller invested $4,000. Within a year, the refinery's profits were greater than their entire produce business. He and Clark went all in. But the oil market was chaotic. Prices swung from $10 to 10 cents a barrel overnight. Clark panicked and wanted out. In 1865, Rockefeller bought Clark's share for $72,500, roughly $1.4 million in today's money. It became one of the greatest deals of his life, because soon after, the largest oil field America had ever seen was discovered. Rockefeller's quiet personal mantra, "I am bound to be rich," began to take shape. He rebranded the business as Standard Oil and brought in a partner who matched his discipline and ruthlessness, Henry Flagler. Together, they built a machine unlike anything America had seen. They negotiated secret deals with railroads. Rockefeller promised huge shipments, and railroads gave him rates so low that sometimes they actually paid him to ship oil. Then came something even darker: drawbacks. Every time a competitor shipped oil on those same trains, a secret payment went straight into Standard Oil's pocket. Competitors were literally funding Rockefeller's rise. With costs lower than anyone else, Rockefeller launched price wars. He slashed kerosene prices until rivals bled money. When they collapsed, he bought them for pennies. If they resisted, he cut off their shipping routes, their barrels, their pipelines, anything that kept them alive. He cut off the air supply of every competitor. Aggressive, ruthless, and at the time, perfectly legal. When oil prices crashed again, Rockefeller and the railroads created a secret cartel called the South Improvement Company. Standard Oil got massive rebates. Everyone else paid double. When the plan leaked, the nation erupted. Crowds burned railroad tracks, dumped oil in the streets, and threatened to kill Rockefeller. The cartel collapsed within weeks, but the fear it created remained. Terrified competitors finally surrendered. In just 6 weeks, a period remembered as the Cleveland Massacre, Rockefeller bought 22 of Cleveland's 26 refineries. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled 90% of America's refining industry. People nicknamed the company the Octopus. When new pipelines made railroads less important, the mighty Pennsylvania Railroad tried to fight back by building its own refineries. Rockefeller responded with total economic warfare. He canceled contracts, drove prices down, and convinced other railroads to join him. The Pennsylvania Railroad lost millions and triggered one of the bloodiest strikes in U.S. history. Eventually, the railroad came crawling back. Rockefeller won again. He expanded vertically, drilling wells, owning pipelines, refineries, tank cars, and even the barrels that held the oil. No middlemen, no vulnerabilities, just pure control. When a new oil field produced foul-smelling skunk oil, everyone else gave up. Rockefeller hired chemists, fixed the problem, and dominated yet another market. Then came automobiles. Gasoline went from waste material to a treasure. Rockefeller owned the entire supply chain. He even frightened steel king Carnegie by buying America's richest iron ore land. Carnegie, terrified of a war he might lose, made a secret truce, massive ore purchases and private rebates in exchange for peace. The deal held until J.P. Morgan combined everything into U.S. Steel, the first billion-dollar corporation. Rockefeller walked away even richer. But public hatred was reaching its peak. Investigative journalist Ida Tarbell exposed Standard Oil's worst secrets. President Theodore Roosevelt needed a villain for his re-election campaign, and he chose Rockefeller. In 1911, the Supreme Court ordered Standard Oil to be broken into 34 separate companies. America celebrated the victory, but Rockefeller won again. He owned 25% of each new company, and when their stocks hit the market, their value tripled. Overnight, Rockefeller became the world's first billionaire. At 70, he retired from business and dedicated himself to giving away his fortune. He founded the Rockefeller Foundation, funded medical breakthroughs, built universities, and helped eradicate hookworm in the American South. He donated the equivalent of tens of billions of dollars. He died in 1937 at the age of 97, still giving. So who was John D. Rockefeller? A ruthless monopolist who crushed thousands of lives, or a devout Christian who saved millions? Perhaps he was both, because no one, before or since, has changed the world quite like he did. If you want the next astonishing story, look for Andrew Carnegie, because his scandals make Rockefeller look like an angel.